It's 1972. I'm 8 years old, and me and my dad are on our way to Candlestick Park for a 49ers preseason game. The Cleveland Browns are in town, and that's great for me because Leroy Kelly's my favorite running back. I pretty much figured my dad scored those tickets because he knows how much I like Leroy Kelly, especially since Gale Sayers is retired. Leroy played in all 14 games in 1972. He was still doing it. So my dad's big sister had worked for the San Francisco Seals since the early 50s. She was in charge of the usherettes and later in charge of the ticket office. And when the Seals left in 1958, she worked for the Giants when they came to town. That's how I got a Giants team signed ball back in 1972. She would keep a ball in her desk and have the players sign it when they came into the office. My Aunt Lila knew a lot of people and would have no problem scoring us some 49er preseason tickets. Frank Sinatra said the coldest winter I ever spent was my summer in San Francisco. Yeah, it was cold at Candlestick that day. We had end zone seats, which I didn't mind. Even now, I don't mind end zone seats. And at least we weren't underneath the upper deck. I mean, when I looked up, I saw sky. It was mostly cloudy on that day. And when the sun did pop out, we were sitting in the shadow of the top of the park. From the get-go, I was cold. And what are you going to do once you sit down? Nothing. The long walk from the parking lot and the warmth has worn off. Now I'm just sitting. And when the sun did come out, we were always just a few feet away from getting some sun on us. The whole game just a few feet away. Sounds dramatic, but for an 8-year-old kid, the difference between enjoying the game and just being there is a few feet. Few seats over, the fans were sitting in the sun. They still had their jackets on, but I know they weren't as cold as me. Where we lived, you didn't need beanies, scarves, and heavy coats. That morning when my mom told me to dress warm, that meant bring a sweatshirt and my windbreaker. That was dressing warm. We lived closer to San Jose than San Francisco. 30 miles makes a difference in climate when you head up north. Of course, we bought a program when we got to the game. I don't remember getting any autographs at that game. I should ask my dad if he remembers. We were just talking about the Raider game we went to in 1973. We got a program, and that one was loaded with autographs. I haven't seen either program since the late 70s. They're gone. I do know they weren't as cool as any of my dad's 49er programs. A few years ago, when he showed me his collection of programs, I could not believe it. Sounds funny, but it changed my life. Besides all of his other programs, he had more than 24 49er programs from the 50s with really cool artwork on the covers. And to me, I find the artwork more appealing than the action photos or those trippy collages they were doing in the early 70s programs. Speaking of artwork, the autograph and the thumbnails from 1973. Me and my brother Ed were at a brand new Burger King opening in Mountain View, California, 50 years ago. Boy, howdy. It was lunchtime on a beautiful sunny summer day, and sitting outside this Burger King in fold-out chairs behind a couple of fold-out tables was 49ers Frank Nunley and Banasek, which was cool because I had both of their football cards. I don't know who told us about this event, but they were signing 1972 49er team photo mini posters for the folks waiting in line. It's hard to tell how big they were because they were sitting down in those fold-out chairs. They had their backs to the sun while they were doing their signing. What I really remember was how blonde Frank Nunley's hair was. I don't remember if they were wearing their jerseys or not. Probably not. The inside decor of the place was 49er themed with Niner colors, which are basically the same as Burger King. The walls were lined with giant-sized images of 49er game action photos in that old-timey style. Not black and white, but brown and tan. Looked really cool. I always thought Frank and Kaz were co-owners of this franchise, but in doing my research, it was Len Rhode who was the owner. He was another 49er lifer who was older than Frank and Kaz. Turns out Len Rhode would later own several Burger Kings and some Applebee's. I guess Frank and Kaz were doing Len a favor, showing up, signing some autographs. I went back there 10 years later when I was in high school, just for old time's sake. Even in high school, I was nostalgic. The place looked the same, just a little run down, but at least it was still there. Most of my hometown disappeared in the early 1970s, block by block. But I do remember the old town before they leveled it in 1970. There used to be many streets filled with stores, all walking distance, all tree-lined. The city wiped it clean except for a small portion of one street deemed historic. Then they put up a giant indoor mall and a bunch of theaters with a giant parking structure on one side and acres of parking on the other. 40 years later, they did a redesign, tore down the mall and the theaters, and spent years putting the streets back the way they used to be. Didn't work. It's now a cement wasteland. Nobody goes down there. My favorite coffee shop is still there on the one street that wasn't torn down in the 70s because it was next to the old train station, both now landmarks. For most of my adult life, I hung out on that street. It's a half block long, not even the length of a football field. And I liked it because it looked old and it felt old because it was old. So let's go. Not back to my hometown, over to Chicago, and the man of the moment, Casimir Joseph Banasek II. He was born October 24th, 1945, in Chicago. Cas played his college football at Northwestern University. He was 6'3", 255 pounds, and a first-round draft pick of the 49ers in 1967. He would be their starting tackle for the 1968 season and was selected second-team All-Pro in 1968 as the rookie. Cas played his entire career with the 49ers from 1968 to 1977, 120 games, and is one of 51 players to be part of the 49er 10-year club. He was an assistant offensive line coach in 1981 for the Niners, the season they won their first Super Bowl. Cas Banasek is in the Chicagoland Sports Hall of Fame. I mention my brother Ed from time to time. We're pretty much opposites. I'm a recluse on top of a mountain, and he's a lively, outgoing dad who will talk to anybody at a party. When we were little, me and my brother would play for hours outside, then inside. Didn't matter. We had a lot of fun doing all kinds of stuff around the house. As we got older, possessions would become an issue. I was a jerk about it. I liked my stuff pristine and didn't want my little brother touching my stuff. All these years later, he's one of my only friends left. Ed, I'm really sorry for all the years I was mean to you. And if I could go back, I would be a better big brother for you. Love you, Ed.